Well, good evening. It is 6 p.m. Pacific Daylight Time. This is the Public Safety Commission meeting for the City of Desert Hot Springs for the 11th of April, 2024. And in just a moment, I will ask Mr. Soriano to give us a roll call.
Commissioner Lozano is absent. Commissioner Martin Mitchell?
Here.
Commissioner Rizzio? Commissioner Vice Chair Cross?
Here.
And Chairman Kenneth Mitchell.
Present.
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. And Commissioner Martin Mitchell, if you would be so kind as to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you, Commissioner. Proceeding, have we all had a chance to peruse the agenda for tonight's meeting?
Yes.
We have. Excellent. I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
I move that we approve the agenda for April 11th, 2024.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second the motion.
All right. If there's no further discussion, please vote.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. I don't see, maybe it's not on this screen. I don't see the minutes from the last meeting.
Correct. There are no minutes this meeting. It'll be on for the next meeting.
Be on for the next meeting? Okay. We'll go ahead and skip that part of it. Do we have any public comments? I don't see.
No, we do not.
No speaker cards filled out? All right, we will refrain from the admonition, and we will skip to the next item on the agenda. I think we were having a discussion about some of this at our last meeting about traffic and traffic statistics. So we now have Mr. Nicholas Hecker, our Public Works Director, who is going to give us a presentation and a report on that subject. And Mr. Hecker, it's all yours.
Thank you. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Nick Haker. I'm the Public Works Director for the city. Tonight I'm going to be doing a presentation on traffic control installations. Quick overview, some items that we'll cover are the federal and state regulations, traffic control devices, warrants, liability, and our request process. So for first thing is the state and federal regulations. We are regulated by the U.S. Department of Transportation, the DOT, from the federal level. From the state level, we're regulated by the California Department of Transportation, Caltrans. We do have a lot of different regulation references. The first one, and this is the most important one for us, is the California Manual on Uniform Traffic Control Devices, the CAL-MUTCD. You'll hear this quite a bit through this presentation. The next one is the California Vehicle Code, the American Association of State Highway and Transportation Officials, and then the Highway Design Manual. So the CAL-MUTCD, the reason why this is so important, it's the standard for all official traffic control devices. This is through the California Governor Code and also the California Vehicle Code. This is what the transportation engineers use to design roads and for the anticipated traffic volumes. This is also the manual that they use when the volumes go beyond what was originally anticipated or collisions increase. This is what they use to analyze the traffic control devices. So traffic control devices, this is coming out of the CAL-MUTCD. It's essentially signs, road markings, speed humps, traffic signs, or traffic signals. It's anything that's placed on, over, or adjacent to the street. Here are some examples, some signs, some markings, and some signals. Warrants. A warrant is a threshold that we use to figure out if there needs to be any changes to the traffic control devices. Without that, or what happens is the engineers do an engineer study to see if there needs to be any changes and if the changes are justified. An engineer study, this is where the warrants identify specific traffic, bicycle, and pedestrian volumes, collision history, and any unusual conditions that may be present in the intersection before traffic control devices may be installed. Liability, this is an important one to us. If the engineer study does not warrant the installation of a traffic control device and the traffic control device is installed, The agency takes on full liability for any accidents, collisions, and disruption in the traffic flow. This means that that traffic study tells us what we put in. We can't just go, I think we need to install a stop sign or a speed hump. So for our own process, the request comes from the public into the engineering division, and they'll give us the location of what they want us to look at. The engineering division will do an internal review of it. The first thing they'll look at is the location design. Is it a four-way stop sign? Is it a two-way, three-way? The next thing they'll do is they'll pull the traffic collision report from our reported traffic accident catalog. If it doesn't meet those, the traffic control devices are not installed. If it does meet it, we'll send this project off to the traffic engineering consultant. They'll do the study, the engineer study. The study will come back to the engineer department. The city engineer will review the recommendations by the consultant and decide if we are going to proceed with these recommendations. For a traffic control request, you can reach the Public Works Department. The number's right there. It's 760-329-6411. 222 is the extension, or the Public Works at cityofdhs.org. Or you could call the engineering department, which is 760-329-6411, extension 221. This reaches Daniel Lopez, our engineer tech. And his email is right there, dlopez at cityofdhs.org. And that concludes my presentation.
Mr. Chair, excuse me, I may add a little bit. I'm Danny Porras. I'm the assistant city manager. I'm also a city engineer. Let me give you guys a quick scenario, kind of how it functions. So, and thank you, Nick, for that presentation. So we have roads, we have uncontrolled intersections, controlled intersections. With traffic, usually, or with accidents, or with infrastructure, whatever that is, they go from a uncontrolled intersection, usually to a stop sign, and then to a traffic signal. That's usually the way it goes. Sometimes they go straight to a traffic signal, depending on what it is. We here as staff don't decide that just out of the blue. You can't just say, I want a traffic signal here. You could say that, but it doesn't function that way. What it is we have to follow certain standards here in California called warrants, and it's pretty much a checkbox. You have to go through a whole entire checklist. Does it meet this requirement? Does it meet this one? Does it meet this one? If it meets all of them, then it says now you can actually install one. Do you want to install one? And then it has to go back, but a certified traffic engineer has to give us that study. We then review it, and then we bring it back to council, and then we start installing it. The reason that is done is because if we were to install stop signs in every single intersection, you can create a conflict. So where people were not used to stopping are now forced to stop. So you can do rear end collisions. Where people are not used to it, then it would be. Then emergency vehicles can't get to sites without even, stopping every intersection. So there's, as much as everybody wants stop signs, speed humps, crosswalks, and everything, we need an engineering study to have that liability. Now, city councils do have authority to install one without one, but then the city holds full liability. And that means a lot for a city. If there's an accident there in the future and somebody says, hey, who installed this or why did they install it, and we have absolutely no reason for it with no engineering study for it, then the city is completely liable. That's why the process is taken. Now, if you are in the public or anybody has any requests saying, hey, I spoke to Commissioner Rizzo last week, 2 weeks ago, right? And he had a request that, hey, I'm seeing a lot of accidents here. That's a perfect request. Send them to us. We'll review them. You guys don't have to review them. We review them. We first look at the geometry. Maybe it's a sight vision problem. Maybe we're missing a sign. Maybe we're missing some street marking. Something simple that we can do real fast. We'll do it immediately. If we have, we can see that there's major accidents that have been in the past, then we immediately can say, yeah, you know what, it is going to warrant it. Now, if there are already stop signs around, or if there's certain features already there, then we know immediately it's not going to match. So we already can deny it or say it's not going to go, unfortunately, at this time. We continue to do those over time. So just because if maybe it didn't meet the warrants today, maybe next year it does. There's also a 50% rule, traffic going one way, traffic going the other. If it's 50%, most likely it'll meet. That's a quick one you can do. So we had to do traffic counts. But all the requests that anybody gets, submit them to us. We review them. We say yes, and then we send them off to our traffic engineer who does the entire report and then brings back recommendations to council. So that's kind of the gist of it. So just so you guys understand the process. Thank you.
Thank you both for that presentation, explanation. At this time, I'll give it to my fellow commissioners, see if they have any questions for Mr. Hecker and Mr. Porras.
Just a basic question. How long does the process usually take from beginning to end?
So Well, we evaluate it fairly quick. Staff here, we can do it in a couple of weeks just to figure out, one, we go out there to the actual intersection itself. We look at some data internally. There is actually police officers in entire California reported to the state. Any traffic collisions that are reported to the PD get reported to the state and get logged. So we actually have access to that. We can go in there and say, can we look at this query, look at this intersection, and we can have those access data. They're a couple of years delayed. I think they're 1 or 2 years delayed. So we don't have the real time, but we still have some that are there, and we can analyze that fairly quick. Now, we have to get an actual proposals from engineering firms to do it. We can't just hire one engineering firm. We usually get proposals from three engineering firms, and then we go with the most qualified. So that might take they have to do traffic counts too, go out here and actually take it. So it could take a week, it could take a couple months, but it isn't years, in other words, that's what I'm saying. So it'll be between 0 to 6 months between do it, and then we have to actually install it. So that's what might take a little bit longer. Now, we try to group them together because the engineering studies do cost money. If we would take every request from every residence, we would spend millions of dollars just on doing studies. So we try to group them. We analyze them first, and we say, hey, we got 3 of them. Okay, are this an emergency? No, it seems like it's not an emergency right now. Okay, then we have 3 of them. Let's group them, and then we do them all together to get a little better price on the actual traffic counts and the actual engineering study itself. So we've done 3 at a time. We've done 6 at a time, depending what it is. We've done various, or we don't get any requests for a while. So when you do have them, the one I could say is from probably 0 to 6 months, we will complete the entire process.
Anyone else? Mr. Rizzo? No?
Oh, can I ask you about the light poles?
Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
Because I know we discussed the light poles, and we talked about how some of them weren't breakaway in those intersections. Is that included in that study, or is that a separate?
No, unfortunately, the light poles is not included, but visibility signs are. They will do signage, they will do striping, they will do infrastructure if there's something in the way. So if the pole is in the wrong way, they will identify, hey, the pole needs to be relocated, but not specifically a sign. They do tell us about signs. Anything, trees are in the way. Sometimes we have trees blocking visibility, so we do get a full report back.
Well, what prompts the replacement of a pole that's not up to safety standard?
The pole the older poles, we do projects that are just specifically for street improvements, and then they include street lights on those. If they do have an issue, then maybe if it's an older pole that needs to fall down, then it'll be just maintenance that replaces it.
Okay. Thank you.
I had a question about you might consider this a multi-jurisdictional interchange, and then there's actually been unfortunately been a couple of fatal accidents there. It's the westbound, it's the Pearson and State Route 62, and we have now we have state highway that's involved, so that kind of ups the ante a little bit as far as, who has to come together. What kind of challenges does an intersection like that bring to the process here in Desert Hot Springs?
Yeah, so it's a lot of challenges, first of all, because even though it's still within the city of Desert Hot Springs, it's not our jurisdiction like you're talking about. So a lot of people don't notice, even Palm Drive, half of it, some portions are in Cathedral City, some of them are in the county. I know when you have traffic collisions, that's a big deal. Who takes the report? I know when there's everyone who takes, it's the same thing for us. We have to identify who's going to be the responsible person to take the lead. In Highway 62 on Pearson, unfortunately, there were some accidents there. We immediately reported it to Caltrans because it is the California Department of Transportation, and when that Nick mentioned earlier in the presentation, they have full jurisdiction over all California highways, and that is a highway intersection. They follow the exact procedure as we do. It is a state procedure. They do warrant analysis, so they started their process. They have escalated our project up to a safety project, and now it's fully funded through a safety funding that the state has, and the design was already at least in process now. We had 2 conceptual drawings reviewed, and right now the date to get it completed or started would be 2027. We wish it would move a little faster, but that is Caltrans. They do require environmental, they do require designs, they do require a lot of requirements to get there. The good thing is it is on radar and it is moving forward. It's one of the top projects in the state. So we do have a project moving forward, and we have it for 2027, and it's gonna cost right now, I think, $8 to $9 million right now so far. So it's not an easy, quick fix, just to kind of give you guys an example on that one.
Oh, yeah, I can imagine, just the fact that you had to, perhaps even 3 jurisdictions.
Yeah.
City of Desert Hot Springs,
Yeah,
you've got
and-
Riverside County, you've got.
That's correct.
State of California, you've got, some competing and hopefully not, but even sometimes conflicting interests going on there, which can make it a bit of a challenge. I did take it upon myself, I was able to dive in and find the manual of uniform traffic control devices. It's nice to be able to just look at it online. And specifically with regards to, saying installing stop signs, and you're, and well advised about the process that you mentioned, that we have to endure in order to get one of those installed. I look at this section specifically mentioning stop signs and some of the qualifications, and interestingly enough, when you talk about stop sign applications and multi-way stop applications, under neither section is it mentioned whether one of the accidents is a fatality. It's not mentioned at all. And many times here at the Public Safety Commission, the first thing we get when somebody says we need a stop sign somewhere is following a fatal accident. They say, this is what needs to be, we need to put something in here right now because it happened once before, it could happen again, and we had a fatality. And I don't know, this may be a concern where it might be good to know your state representatives, because it looks like in order to make that a priority, it would require a change in the state law, and to know who your assembly member is and know who your state senators are, to get it kicked up to the committee and maybe have a revision of that. Now, very possible, and I'm going to ask you this question, if it's somewhere else, if not in the Uniform Traffic Control Device Manual, is it anywhere else in the other sources that you use?
So, again, it's various check marks. It's not just a fatality. If we have a combination of the same, let's say broadside accidents, you have 10 of them within a certain time period, then it will still score high. So it doesn't have to just be a fatality.
Right.
Left turn conflicts is a big deal. It's probably the biggest one than fatalities, so it's not just fatalities, but fatalities obviously does score higher. Unfortunately, it does score higher as an incident. So I don't know the exact parameters of it, but we can get the information to you.
Okay. All right. Yeah, this is just a brief, it's quite a document. It's something you want to get some cocoa, maybe pump some soft music in the background and spend your time reading it. And there's an awful lot of information. Well, it's the law. If you've ever been to a law library, you'll know what I'm talking about. So it can be intimidating. But yes, if that information is available in some of the other sources, it would be interesting to be able to divulge that to the members of the public, because that's what they often come to us and remark about. Great presentation to both of you. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Any further questions? All right. Should we move directly into the administrative reports then? Let's go ahead and begin with the code compliance report.
Good evening, guys. So the month of March of 2024, code compliance received a total of 117 service requests. We completed a total of 455 inspections. We issued 148 notices of violations. We issued 54 citations totaling $102,800, and we removed 15 carts from the public right-of-way. Officer Human obtained compliance from the owner of a single-family residential house located on Ramona Drive. The officer initiated the case due to the absence of landscaping, insufficient ground cover, and the presence of weeds. The property owner addressed all the violations and installed appropriate ground coverage and landscape. Compliance Officer Mark Valdez achieved compliance for a commercial lot located on Palm and 3rd after opening the case for trash, junk, and debris. Officer Valdez also gained compliance from a multifamily triplex property located on Taco Way. The case was opened for overgrown weeds and dead vegetation. Compliance Officer Human gained compliance from the property owner on Palm Drive. The property had numerous complaints for junk, trash, and debris. In addition to being open and unsecured, the property was cleared of all violations and obtained a 602 no trespassing order. Compliance Officer Brock inspected 2 short-term vacation rentals that were previously denied their permit and 1 short-term vacation rental that had been stagnant since December of 2023. Officer Brock was able to gain compliance from all 3 operators All 3 operators are now legal. Compliance Officer Human gained compliance from a property owner on 4th Street. There's a single-family residential home with multiple nuisances at the property. The case lasted approximately 3 years and had excessive calls for service to the police department. The property owner opted to demolish the red tag structure and is now exploring the possibility of building a new home on the vacant lot. And I've attached photos for you guys on the second page, the before and afters. And that'll conclude my report, but I'm happy to answer any questions.
Questions for code compliance?
Yes, on the last one, I was wondering what took so long for us to act on that one. Because after 3 years and multiple calls, I would think that, something would have happened sooner. Is it that the homeowner doesn't live in the area, or?
No, that was a really interesting case. It was in probate. We had a deceased owner, and so when it entered probate, there was a lot of legal stuff involved. That's what kind of stretched it out so long. A lot of stuff that wasn't in the city's control, but we made sure we could maintain the property, keep it secured, and keep everybody out of it.
Yeah, okay. So to start off, it's good to see an uptick in enforcement and that the cactus at that property was unharmed. But mainly, so I was looking at the mid-year budget adjustments, and I saw quite a large decrease in budgets for code enforcement. Would that just be from a decrease in staff, or do you know what the reason behind that would be?
We did have a decrease in our contract services. We got rid of the overnight I-Secure contract we had. Then we got rid of our Wildan contracts as well. Also, we had a lot of extra demolitions and abatements that you can't really plan for, such as the Sahara last year. So that's probably where you're seeing all that decrease at.
Okay, and then some of those contracts were to deal with like vacation rentals and things like that previously?
Yes, exactly.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Anyone else?
What's happening with the Hyundai Resort and Spa, the one that's vacant and condemned?
Yeah, so that's being repaired right now. It's under a receivership, so it's in the court's hands, but we're going to monitor it. So we still find out what happened in court. We still have our city attorney show up to court. We right now we just monitor the court's progress. With a receivership, the way it kind of works, the court grants the property to a contractor in this case, or contractor in this case, to go in and rehab the property or hire whoever he needs to rehab the property. And then after the property's been rehabbed, then he gets the authority to sell the property. And once that property sells, that's when he'll get paid.
Okay. Just a couple of questions. One of my favorite buildings in town, I believe it's the building that's on Palm Drive opposite the Dollar General. It's been there for quite some time. And
11360, I think.
yes. Do we have an update on the situation of that building?
Yeah, I don't have an update myself on that, but I can definitely follow up with Christina on that one.
Okay. All right. That's good. That's good. And do you have, when you do the inspections and out talking about, well, a couple of things. Number one, when you're doing the inspections for weed abatement and things, are you shadowed by anybody from the fire end? Because I remember when during my career, when we had to go out and do inspections, and we actually had to go out into, we used to call it the WUI. I don't know if they even use that term anymore. And we used to hand out citations to homeowners that had overgrown weeds and things because there's actually a fire hazard. The weeds blaze up, and all of a sudden you have two buildings exposed to fire. So I was wondering if they had fire go out there with you on those.
Oh, no, fire does not, they don't come out there with us.
Okay.
If we requested it, I'm sure they would, but we typically on those cases, they're not needed.
Okay. All right. And subsequent to that, how many times does the Desert Hot Springs Police Department shadow you when you're going out and making inspections? Because sometimes you find yourself in a not prepared for situation.
Oh, yeah, so we have our handheld on us, our walkie on us, so anytime we need them, we can get on dispatch and send somebody out for us. Typically, we're not gonna put ourselves in that danger. If we see something that looks a little dangerous, we're gonna leave and contact PD to either head out there with us later, schedule something out with them, or just come back later when it's safer.
All right, do a scene secure?
Yep.
Yeah, wait for that. Familiar with that terminology as well. Thank you very much for your report.
Thank you.
Nobody else? Okay. All right, great. Let's move to the monthly report from Animal Control.
Yes, sir. So for the month of March, we had approximately 99 intakes. That's including everything in our shelter, whether it be deceased or alive. We returned 21 animals back to their owners. 14 of those were sent to rescue. We adopted 25 out. 25 were taken to the vet. Just the 25 that were taken to the vet was because of the adoptions. So we have to spay and neuter and make sure everything goes okay before they're sent to their new homes. And then 32 were dead on arrival. One passed away in the facility from an unknown medical condition. We euthanized 3. We did 20 licenses. We wrote out 20 administrative cites, gave 40 warning citations, and we had 234 calls for service. We also had the Animal Action League bus in our parking lot for the month of March, and they spayed and neutered 25 animals for the public.
All right, great, thank you. Questions for Animal Control?
I have just one. I know there's going to be a new animal control building or an additional one. Are there any developments as far as that goes?
Well, it's new to us, but has already been there, and we consumed all the animals that were on the property. So we've had that building and everything in it since January.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Okay. All right, thank you for your report and all your hard work. With 234 calls of service, whip out the calculator, 8 a day. That's working. Thank you. Yeah, thanks again. The monthly report from the fire service.
Good evening, Commissioners. So for your monthly report for the month of March, there was 440 requests for service. Excuse me, I'm getting my notes here. So 440 requests for service in the Desert Hot Springs jurisdiction. Desert Hot Springs engine ran 364 of those. Desert Hot Springs engine responded outside of the jurisdiction 98 times, but received 246 times of mutual aid received into the city. Your average response time increased a little bit from the previous month, up to 4.60 minutes. Still maintaining around 217 were less than 5 minutes. You had 100 calls that were greater than a 5-minute response time. You had 9 calls that were 10 minutes or greater and 2 that were at the 20-minute mark. For the month of March, there were 3 significant incidents. The first one was at the Serrano Residential Care Facility, where an outside fire extended into the facility due to the winds. And then you had 2 vegetation fires. One of them was a half acre of mulch, and then the other one was just vegetation that extended due to the winds and went for several acres. That concludes the report for the month of March, and I'm happy to answer any questions the Commission might have.
Questions for the fire chief on the March report?
Yeah, I have a question. What gave you a better response time? Was there any significant traffic situations or?
No, response times are kind of weird, especially with averages. One really good call can swing the average, one way or another. There's some better metrics that we look at where we're trying to meet a response time within a certain percentile. That's not the way that our statistics are generally reported for this report. So response times, it really can vary on, usually we see an increase in response times. Historically, it's because of concurrent calls. There's only so many resources that are available. The way that our model is built is that the ideal response time is when that resource is in quarters. So that first call, where it comes out of that fire station, the next one, it could be all the way across the city.
Gotcha.
So that's a reason for an increase that we see there.
Okay.
Other times you'll see an increase due to concurrent calls. So if engine 37 is committed, that means that the next closest fire engine is coming. So instead of a 4 or 5 minute response time, we're looking at, a 6 or a 7. When that engine gets committed, then your next option is the Sky Valley Fire engine, and then you see response times. Those are where you're seeing those 10, 15s, sometimes even as great as 20, depending on the utilization of that resource.
Thank you.
Yes, okay. So just to clarify, there was 2 fires around the Two Bunch Palms area. Those would be completely unrelated, or?
Unrelated. We don't have any indication that there was, an arsonist or that they were connected.
Okay. And then I saw in one that the police department notified code enforcement to follow up for illegal dumping. Would dumping in that area have contributed to the fire, or was it more of just like a brush fire?
No, the dumping, especially with the green waste and the mulch, it's very susceptible to time and temperature. There's actually best practices for green waste and mulch, and it's supposed to be dumped out of the vehicle the same day that it's cut. If you store it, it builds heat. Spontaneous combustion can happen. So anytime there's fires associated with illegal dumping, when we look at the natural environment, historically it's good for years on end. It's when humans start messing with it where we run into those challenges and problems.
And you believe that that's something that was related to that fire?
That particular one, yes.
Okay. And then the other one near Verbena and Two Bunch, it also said it involved homeless encampments and debris. Could the same be said for that fire?
Yeah, again, when we look at the natural state of the vegetation, if there's, we call them exclusions. So when we go through our exclusion and our causes, we look at lightning. Well, there were no storms, no lightning. Look at electrical. There's no electrical in the area. Then we just start going through the checkbox, and that kind of narrows your focus in when you do your origin and cause investigation. And typically, it leaves you with a couple of scenarios. It's either undetermined arson, or it could be associated with cooking. Those particular fires were undetermined. We didn't have enough evidence to say, that it was Colonel Mustard with the candlestick, or even narrow that origin and cause into a reportable category.
Okay, got it. I understand. Thank you.
With the encampment, were there homeless people actually living there, or was it abandoned at the time?
No, it was occupied.
Occupied. So, what happened to those individuals who were there? Were they referred to or taken to the housing up on was it Hacienda?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You're talking about the hub, right?
The hub.
Yeah, the hub. Were they taken to the hub or referred to the hub? Do you know?
So I don't have the specifics on that call. Historically, the transient encampments are, they're not new to us out here in the Coachella Valley. It's not unique to Desert Hot Springs. It's throughout the entire valley. A lot of times it's a conversation with the battalion chiefs and code compliance, and as well as our partners in law enforcement. So usually the referral is made. The folks working on the fire engines are aware of the service. Oftentimes, they make those recommendations. There are other times where we do like a targeted approach, and that's more of, the group works together and we'll bring those resources out to them. But on this specific one, I don't have the details if there was an official referral made for them.
We're still in the March report, correct?
Yes, sir.
So, do the March statistics reflect the activity of engine 36?
They do not. We're still working on fixing that reporting system. The way that this auto report is generated, every time that we try to link the additional engine, it causes problems. This report is multi-jurisdictional. It goes to a bunch of different jurisdictions as well. And we have yet to figure out how to isolate just the Desert Hot Springs plus adding engine 36 into it. So the way that this report is generated is it looks at a jurisdiction and not necessarily an individual resource.
I see. Okay. And just as a refresher, the uniqueness of engine 36, how it's staffed, who owns the engine, who owns the station, who, who provides the firefighter and the paramedic firefighter. If you could just go over that again. Barry.
Sure. So many years ago, the county fire station at 36 used to be down off of Dillon. During the economic boom and the Skyborn community, part of that developer agreement was to include a fire station. That fire station was built. It is owned by the city of Desert Hot Springs. There was a period of time, and I don't know the exact number of years, where it was boarded up. It was right around the 2008 and the housing bubble when everything started to slow down. Mm-hmm. The county fire station down off of Dillon became uninhabitable. It was, the county was looking for an opportunity to relocate that engine. Desert Hot Springs was in desperate need of a second fire engine, and at the time it was a good business practice for the county who needed to house that fire engine. So to answer the specific question, the fire engine and the staffing is paid for by the county. The city owns the fire station. They pay the utilities. They pay the maintenance. They do all of the upgrades and the upkeep, and that's how it essentially shakes out.
And that cross-jurisdictional partnership may preclude some of the difficulty in getting the statistics together, because you have to go out and, to get the Desert Hot Springs response, you have to go out and get the county statistics and where 36 meets in the county and all that, so.
Right, and the way that this report is generated is that they're automated. We could individually do it, but this one is an automated report. We are struggling within the county fire department to fill all of our positions. We recently created a new research and data bureau and statistics. They have a decision support manager that's in there, and then right now it's an army of one. So her name is Callista. She's extremely busy with the reports, and it is kind of those prioritizing things within the fire service. It is on our agenda to fix so that we can get this report that would be all-encompassing for you. We just haven't been able to achieve it yet.
Okay, well, we eagerly await that to take place. Are there any more questions for the fire chief on the March report? Okay, so we can go ahead and proceed to the quarterly report.
I'm sorry, Commissioner, a quarterly report for fire?
Yes.
Sure.
Yeah, that was, I guess they're separate on our monitors. So I feel we could take a look at the statistics for January 1st through March 31st separately from the dedicated March report.
Sure. So there were a total of 1,310 incidents within the Desert Hot Springs jurisdiction. Kind of the breakout of what that looks like, 1,054 were handled by a Desert Hot Springs fire engine. Desert Hot Springs responded outside of the jurisdiction 270 times. However, they received 799 times or occurrences of assistance. Now, those are different resources and engines, but if we just look at engine for engine and we're going to compare a like resource, Desert Hot Springs engine responded out 270 times, and a different fire engine from outside of the jurisdiction responded in 710 times. And then the significant incidents, there's a list of them there, and I'd be happy to address if there's anything specific the commission would like me to touch on.
Very well. Are there any questions for the fire chief on the quarterly fire report? None? No. Okay. Well, perhaps not pertinent directly to the quarterly report, and thank you for the information. I was aware that there's a change in the public safety campus,
Yes, sir.
and that Station 37 may not be, retrofitted, upgraded, or replaced as soon as we would have liked. Now, my understanding was, in order for the paramedic squad to go into service, some modification would have had to be made to Station 37 to get it responding out of that station. In light of the recent changes that have been made at the most recent city council meeting, is there a contingency plan for housing and getting that squad in service?
So we're working through some of those challenges, understanding that There's a little shift in the financial times. Revenues are flattening, costs are continuing to increase, and it really just comes a math equation. So working with city manager's office, working with assistant city manager and the public works director, we're looking for alternative ways to still achieve increasing the living space to accommodate the firefighters, but without triggering all of the pieces that were in the initial scope. Within that initial scope and bid, there was a lot of ADA enhancements that had to be completed, as well as some other modifications that would force us to come in compliance with current building code and some of those other challenges. So the team is working together to look for alternative solutions where we could increase some of the living space without triggering the ADA, the full upgrade to become compliant with code. And there's some unique solutions out there that we're looking at, whether it's using the library, additional trailer off-site, maybe reconfiguring the gym into a day room, to look at using the available dollars without going through the full TI upgrade.
Okay. And pursuant to that, do we have an upgrade, not an upgrade, an update, rather, on the status of Station 98?
So 98, the construction bid was awarded. I just had a meeting with the assistant city manager and the engineer, Danny, and we were working through some of the scheduling. Pre-construction meeting is on the horizon, where we're going to get together, look at some of the FF&E, review the design, make sure that we're all on the same page. One of the biggest things is a unified process for change orders, so that way there's a tracking log, there's a mechanism, there are roles and responsibilities and approvals, and then there'll be a groundbreaking ceremony that's on the horizon as well, and then kickoff in construction. So there is some light site work that is occurring on the property right now, and that was from an additional project off of, I believe it was Longhorn Canyon that they mentioned.
Long Canyon Drive,
Long Canyon,
yes.
yeah. And so once that wraps up, be kicking that meeting off. My understanding is that it should be between now and the first or second week of May. And then the contractor, the build time, my understanding from the initial conversations is 14 to 18 months for completion of the project.
Okay. And that should be right around the time the Quint is delivered.
Correct. The Quint, of all things, is actually ahead of schedule. Everything else is behind schedule in the fire department world. The Quint, we're pleasantly surprised at the midpoint inspection. We're being told mid to late summer, which was a little bit faster than we anticipated. Some of our other projects, we're seeing build times of 900 days for a fire engine, which is kind of, when you're looking at a capital replacement program, and especially for the county fire department when it's so large. 96 fire engines. It's very difficult to try to forecast budgets, and then 900-day build times is incredible.
Yeah, that's. I think I mentioned it at a previous meeting. One of my former captains was on the apparatus committee. He was telling me about 4 years from identifying the need for a new piece of apparatus to its actual delivery date, which is it's unheard of.
Yeah.
But when I first started out in the fire service, we were talking about engines being in service for 15 years and truck companies being in service for 20 years. And then we got another chief, and he says, no, we're going to change things. We're going to make the engines in service for 12 and make the trucks in for 15. And it almost seems like, with the economy being what it is, we're going back to the older model and running our engines out and all of our apparatus out for a longer period of time. Of course, now we have a larger population, you're running more calls, and 3 more years for a fire engine or 5 more for a truck is like 10 more.
Yeah.
Based on the number of runs they're making. So it's making for quite the quandary.
The unique part with the contract with us in the county fire department and CAL FIRE, so the engine is what's called a cost allocation and equipment replacement plan. So historically those numbers are exactly to your point. It could be 10 years before you see another fire engine. 37 is on their second fire engine in less than 5 years. So we're using technology. We're using a program called Faster, where we're looking at the amount of miles. Obviously, the busier fire engines, they rack up the miles faster. So we are trying to balance that out across the force. So a lot of technology, a lot of different metrics that we're looking at to make sure that we have reliable in-service equipment, that we don't have fire engines, with 250,000 miles on the high end, and some of the slower stations only have a fire engine, with 7,000 miles. So equipment does get moved around. The ladder trucks, though, however, all of the ladder trucks in our system are individually owned by either the county or the city, and those are the ones that we're seeing, to your point, where we're looking at the 10 to the 15 years. We are in discussions with our partners about forming a ladder truck allocation group on how everybody can pay into that system, because as a region, everybody kind of benefits from a ladder truck. And so we're trying to break those numbers down to develop a fair formula, and then also give the cities, the price of these things it's astronomical what's happening in the world around us. To put it in perspective, a fire engine in 2004 was $226,000. They're pushing $1.3 million now for a fire engine. If I were to buy a fire engine and we cut a PO this week for a brand new fire engine, it's actually the same price that you paid for your 105-foot ladder truck. New ladder trucks are pushing $2.4 million. It's just incredible, the skyrocketing increase that we've seen. As a fire department, we're looking at alternative cost solutions for like squads, for example. Squads, even a squad is pushing $300,000 now. Well, now we're looking at light attack vehicles, light squads that carry, it's essentially a pickup truck that when you're looking at the cost. So, some of our apparatus are as high as $10 a mile to operate. When you start looking at those things, it's not very economic for the community or the city. So we're looking at alternative vehicles that have a much lower operating cost. They're faster, more maneuverable, and trying to see how to best serve the city. The county fire department is going through a strategic plan review. So there's several components coming to it, as well as an accreditation process. And there's going to be some outside parties that are running, studies and analysis, and really going to reshape the fire department. So what we know right now is every time somebody dials 911, you get a fire engine and an ambulance. That model may be changing here in the near future.
Interesting. Yeah, well, we'll be looking forward to some of those changes, and some with more anticipation than others, or probably more like trepidation. Yeah, thank you for the information, and we'll see where we go from there. And nothing else for the fire chief. We'll move to the police department report.
Thank you. Good evening, commissioners. For the stats, you have the crime stats in front of you. For March, nothing significant on the crime stats. The biggest increase was in aggravated assaults and simple assaults. No real reason, nothing was serious related or anything like that, but that was an increase from the same time last year, and an increase from the first 2 months of the year. So. And then a slight decrease in the burglaries, so that was the most significant information from the crime stats. For the patrol stats for the month of March, the officers answered 2,128 radio calls. Officers initiated 1,156 calls on their own and 64 accident calls. Did a total of 113 arrests and issued 296 citations for the month of March. And that concludes the crime stats and the patrol stats for the month of March. Included in your package, I included some information on the mid-year budget information for the police department. Just a footnote on this mid-year budget already went to city council, was approved, so this was just information for you. What you'll see there, the first part of it on the public safety funds, you'll see it as revenues. That's strictly changes made through the finance department. Really, police department has no control over that, but it's changes. So when you see the revenues, there wasn't actually an increase of $341,000 that went to the police department. That's changes that go on throughout the fiscal year in terms of salaries, workers' comp, that type of thing. Below that, the patrol and field expenditures, again, changes throughout the fiscal year on salaries and overtime and that type of thing. There's actually no money added to the police department budget at the mid-year review, and there was no money taken away, so we stayed basically status quo. On the second page, you'll see information for the animal control. There was an increase, as mentioned earlier. The animal campus did open up at the beginning of the year. The city took control of that property over on Indian Canyon. So when you look at the accounting string, the last 4 digits, the 8018, that's going to be a new accounting string that is specifically to the new animal campus that is on Indian Canyon. So there were increase in funds that were provided to get that facility up and running. As mentioned earlier, we took over that facility as well as with all the animals. I think there were about 60 dogs and 30 or so cats that the city took on. So immediately we took on those animals. We hired on some additional kennel technicians. Those were folks that were already actually working at that facility, so they're familiar with that facility and the animals there. But there's a lot of maintenance that had to happen immediately, and that's actually still going on with that facility that unfortunately the prior owners just kind of let go. So we're working on that continually to get that up, but that's that increase in revenue that was set up for the new facility there. And then you see some changes there with the dispatch center, and again, that just falls back to changes in salaries, workers' comp, and stuff like that. We are in the last quarter for this fiscal year, for the 23-24 fiscal year. So currently, right now, the police department is at about 78% of its budget in the last quarter. Animal control is at 68%, and dispatch center is at 67% as we finish up this last quarter, these last 3 months of the quarter. So that's where we are with the budget and the crime stats. I'm happy to answer any questions for you. Oh, I do have one other thing, and I apologize. I wasn't here last time, and Commissioner Lozano's not here, but and I can bring it up next time also. I know at the last meeting she had inquired about cold cases for homicides. So just some quick information on the cold case. I just went back about 5 years. So for 2023, we have one, and I say cold case, unless it's solved, it's an active case. So there may be cases that leads have dried up, but we continually go back and review those cases and see if there's new evidence. Again, recanvass the area, look at evidence that we previously had. But so for 2023, we have one cold case. For 2022, we have one cold case. And then we go back. In 2023, we had 2 homicides. So one was solved, and one is currently still under investigation. In 2022, we had 6 cases, 5 were solved, and we have 1 still active case. In 2021, we had 6 cases, 2 are unsolved, so we solved 4 cases. In 2020, we had 6 cases, we have 1 unsolved with 5 solved. And then in 2019, we had 7 cases, 2 are still inactive or cold cases, and 5 were solved. And then 2018, there were 3 cases, and all 3 of those were solved. So we're running about an 80-85% solve rate, which is extremely high for homicides. And again, those cold cases, we never close them until they're solved. So there may be some, if I went back in the books way, 20 years back, I'm sure I can find some that are still open. And again, those one of those things that we keep them. The homicide binders are in our office, in the detective's office, and it's one of those things continually that they go back, look at that and see if there's some new evidence, spark some new interest in the case. And again, they don't close until we solve them. That concludes my report.
Questions for the police chief?
Okay, so first, just for my own edification, expenditures that fell under the Budget Act of 2016, what would that entail?
Yeah, so that was a grant. And the number, I think it was 54,000 roughly that we did.
Yeah.
So that was a grant back from 2016, and we did recently, we were able to reallocate those funds, it's still grant funds, and use those towards our homeless outreach.
Okay.
So it's through the state, so we contacted the state, and we worked it out with them, being able to reallocate those funds to use it for some specific homeless outreach.
Okay, nice. And then one more question, not related to the budget. Just generally, more related to panhandling in intersections, how does PD usually respond to those sort of things?
Yeah, so it is, there is public information flyers that the city have put out there. One, for the public, to let them know, hey, that's not the place to give out. If you want to donate, then do it to a charitable organization. When you do it to individuals that are on the streets, in the intersections, and that's just encouraging that type of behavior. But we will go out, whether the officers see it themselves or we get a complaint, we will first try for voluntary compliance for folks to let them know, hey, move along, you can't do this here. If we don't get voluntary compliance, then we'll do enforcement, and that might be a citation or it may be an arrest.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else?
I was curious about the allocation of the funds going towards the homeless. How did you say it?
The homeless outreach?
Yeah, how's that working?
Yeah, so it's continual. It's one that it's not going to stop. So we do have almost pretty much daily that we're going out, we're contacting the individuals on the street. Most of them, because we are a smaller community, most of them are known, and we've talked to them numerous times. Most individuals that are homeless and on the streets, the first time that we contact them and provide services and offer those up, they're not going to accept them. It's going to take a while for them before they finally do. But it's something that we continue doing. And even if we've contacted someone yesterday, if we see them tomorrow, we'll still contact them, find out if they took advantage of those services, and continue to offer those to them. That specific grant money, we were able to purchase an off-road vehicle that also allows us to get out into the desert area where we have a large population of our homeless encampments. So now we can get out there without using our patrol vehicles, getting stuck and that type of thing, to get out there, both to outreach for the homeless, but then we found also when we had the tropical storm this last year, we had trouble getting out into those areas, and that new vehicle will allow us access out there in case of a natural emergency or something like that.
Good. Thank you.
Okay. Well, just a couple of questions that I had. Do we have an update on the road closures here in Desert Hot Springs?
Yeah, so Indian and Dillon are the ones that they're still working on. My understanding from the last update is they were moving along, and we should, by the end of April, I believe was when we should start seeing those open up. So I know we're within a few weeks of those last two areas on Indian and Dillon being opened up.
Oh, okay. All right, that's good news.
Yeah.
Indeed we are. Your staffing, which we always, correspond with each other on. How do we stand with our staffing at this time?
Yeah, we're looking pretty good. So, we're staffed for 33 officers. Number 30 is currently in the police academy. He's about halfway through the academy right now. That officer graduation date is in July of this year, so that'll be number 30. We currently have 2 potential officers that are in backgrounds, so that would be 31 and 32, and then that one spot just looking to fill. So we still have some applications coming in. We do have one officer, Stephanie. I get the evil eye from Stephanie every time I mention it, but one of her animal control officers is set for the academy in October. So that one's more extended because once he starts in October, then it's 6 months out from there. But we do have him slated for there. So we're very close to being fully staffed there with patrol officers.
Okay. Very good. I think, I believe that's all that I have now. I'm sure in 10 minutes it'll come up, as it always does. But thank you very much for that information. Very well. We now move to the commissioner reports. Who would like to go first?
I can go first. So first off, related to a concern that Kathy, I believe her name was, talking about the buses near the senior center. I emailed the CEO of Sunline, Mona Babata, I think is how it's pronounced, and she said her staff was working on it and would get back to me as soon as possible. So I'll keep you updated. And then if all goes well, I'm just waiting confirmation. I should be able to stop by the high school next week.
Nice.
And then what I would like to do is related to panhandling. I think that's a pretty significant issue in the city. And of course, it is illegal under our codes and then state codes. So I think what would be really beneficial is maybe having signs at intersections. So like I was in Dallas for the eclipse, and I even saw signs there saying not to give to panhandlers, but also having information on where you can send money if you'd like to donate. But also, I think if we had like a number you could call, that would decrease panhandling a lot. So I would like to maybe get that on the next agenda so we can discuss those things in our opinions a bit more in detail.
Okay, we can definitely do that. The signage that you refer to that you viewed in Dallas, now are these like regulatory signs that you might find in California denoting the locations of parks, stop signs, speed limits, of those types of signs, or are you just talking about signs that are permitted, made by community members?
So from what I could tell, it would be a city sign, and then I know Cathedral City also has similar signs.
Okay, so that's something we could take up with Public Works.
Yeah, and it might
see
be
if they can
might be fairly cost effective and lead to and mitigate that problem pretty significantly.
Certainly. I remember we would always in our uniforms just carry cards that had the number of the United Way. And if we saw somebody that needed some help or anything like that, if they needed food, if they needed medical care, if they needed shelter for the night, we just pull the card out of our uniform and say, call this number, and they'll take care of you. Anything from, groceries to shelter. So that might be one number that we come up with, and certainly be some other numbers. It's a good idea.
Yeah, and then with the hub, you can also, always want to direct people there. Whether or not they accept help is a different thing. But
Sure, absolutely. So nothing wrong with that at all. So let's go ahead and proceed with that. Anyone else?
Okay, a couple of weeks ago, Commissioner Rizzio and I met with Deputy Chief Shaw to discuss National Night Out and other emergency preparedness issues that would pertain to Desert Hot Springs. And when we would normally have it, the first Tuesday in October, that's City Council meeting. So, I'm going to recommend another date. Maybe we can have it on a Friday when they have the food trucks already out there that, people come to, or even on a Saturday where we can have it. It doesn't have to be on that date. And we also discussed possibly bringing CERT training to DHS as well. I've been interacting with a lot of people throughout the various cities in the valley who do emergency preparedness, and I'm learning a lot from that. For example, Rancho Mirage has a emergency preparedness commission for the city, and they help prepare the city for, and they have different events and help prepare the city. But there are a ton of resources out there that we can use, and we don't have to recreate the wheel for what we want to do. But I would like to, try to get that started for us. In terms of, back up a little, in terms of National Night Out, I think this year would be best just to have a centralized event, and then we can tack on emergency preparedness, have different organizations like the American Red Cross and Coachella Valley Disaster Preparedness Network and other organizations to come out and have booths so they can at least pass out information to the citizens, and then from there we can have more individual meetings within neighborhoods, because basically the model is neighbor helping neighbor during emergencies. So that is the national model that they do follow, and so having meetings with different neighborhood groups, that's what I eventually want to do, probably starting in the fall once the snowbirds return, because they also have to be prepared.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, because if there's a major earthquake, no one's leaving the valley.
Well, I can imagine many of the snowbirds would be coming to the residents that are here full-time asking, what do we do?
So
We
we
don't have
want
those up
to,
in the Canadian Shield, but go ahead.
yeah, so we want to make sure everyone's prepared, you know.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, great. Yes, that Coachella Valley Disaster Preparedness Network is a liaison to really a cornucopia of agencies, if they can get involved, and training. We talked about CERT training before. If we could probably take that over to staff and maybe have a class that's based out of our rec center, that would be a good place to do it. It's a big wide open space and can accommodate many students. Because I was just the other day I was going to get a haircut here in town, and the barber was remarking how far it is he's got friends in India that want him to socialize with them, and he talked about, do you know how much gasoline is, and you know how far India is from Desert Hot Springs? It's 31.7 miles each way and all this kind of thing. So if we can get training localized, that might get people more encouraged to participate. If they have to hit the road and go some distance, they might hesitate a little bit.
Yeah, that's why I want to bring it local, because
Yes.
people don't want to travel. And also, I'd like to commend the chief, deputy chief, Councilmember Jan Pye for shaving their heads in support of a young man who has cancer.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Excellent. I echo that. Thank you. It's nice to hear. Anything from Commissioner Riccio?
Yeah, I'd like to report, I met with Daniel Porras on the 3rd that he had mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
We had a really productive meeting about the traffic safety and the evaluations of the intersections and things, and he brought up everything that he had discussed here today.
Okay.
So, and he said that he will do a evaluation at the intersection of Desert View and Ocotillo, because that seems to be a really has a lot of detrimental things going on there.
Right.
So we'll see. He asked if I wanted to do 4 intersections, and I said, well, I would like to start out with this intersection first, and then we can see the data. And then I think we're going to be surprised at the data because of what I see every day. And then once we see that data, we can move forward and take it into other areas of the city as well. And then we also talked about the light poles. And the light poles in the residential areas, 85% of the light poles that I noticed were the old Class 3 copper wood poles that don't break away when you smack into them.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, like we have the corridor on Palm Drive, we have all the nice new light standards and things that break away, and they're LEDs, and the wiring's underneath the ground and
Sure.
stuff like that. So there's a lot of things that can be evaluated and corrected, and hopefully we can cut down on traffic collisions in the
Okay.
city.
Excellent. Yeah, Palm Drive is the, here in Desert Hot Springs, I like to refer to it as the golden child, the favorite son. It gets all the new stuff and all the cool toys
Well, it's because that
first.
corridor goes to a freeway. So I
Exactly.
think
Well,
they get funding from Caltrans for that.
and it's also our mercantile corridor.
Yeah.
You know, when people come to Desert Hot Springs, you know, those that come to do business and everything like that, that's the street that they see. So we want to entice people to come in here and do those things. So we have to make it pretty. So
Well, we gotta make it safe for the residents at the same time.
at the same time,
Yeah.
exactly. So we'll branch out from that and
Right.
maybe, you know, get some of those same improvements on the other streets.
Definitely.
So, excellent. Well, in my own report, I can refer back to you. I did read your email.
Oh,
You know, I took a look at
What
the SOPs and
document? Oh, the
SOGs.
SOP, great.
The SOP, SOG document in particular, because in past meetings, I brought that up. You know, sometimes, you know, in staying with the highway motif, going down the freeway, there's no speed limit signs, there's no lane markers, or everything like that. Then you get pulled over and said, oh, you're speeding. Speeding? How do I know I'm speeding? I don't know how fast I'm supposed to go. So I did read this document. I have some comments written down here, and perhaps a sidebar is in the offing in the near future. And I would like to probably, you know, sit down and compare this. Were 2 documents. One was emailed to me by the city clerk. It's the meeting guidelines and procedures.
Oh, good, we stimulated a little bit of
Yeah, we got a little bit.
drop from the top, huh?
Yeah, we do. Well, right
That
from
was the
here,
idea.
Right from, and I'd like to compare the documents
Sure,
side by
definitely.
side, also, in addition to the Muni Code, which definitely spells out what our duties are.
Yes,
And I think there's some gaps in there that can be filled by what you submitted. But of
Thank you.
course, we have to go through the proper channels,
most definitely.
and that means sitting down with the subcommittee that deals with the commissions, which is Councilmember Gardner and
Okay.
Councilmember Pye, and have the city attorney kind of rubber stamp it, make sure it's, it makes legal muster. And then if it passes those two hurdles, bring it back to the entire commission, because it's going to affect all of us and how we operate. And then at that point, we refer it to the entire city council to vote
Good.
on. So I think we can probably make some progress on that between now and our summer recess, which is going to be another subject we talk about.
When does that commence?
The Muni Code allows us to go dark for July and August.
July and August.
And last year, we did July and August, and some people thought that was an awful long time. If we could, we may have to decide just to take one of those 2 months,
I think we shouldn't take any months, but,
yeah?
you know,
The city council, they go dark as well.
there's just so much to do,
You have,
so little time.
You were about
I'd
to say
probably agree with not taking a recess, or
Okay.
or at the very least shortening it.
okay, yeah, we can talk about that, definitely, it's approaching. Because when you have a June meeting, and you have no July meeting, and you have no August meeting, you have a 3-month gap,
Yeah,
and
and a brain gap.
you do. When I get one of those 4- and 6-day breaks in the fire service back in the day, and it takes you a couple of calls to get back into the rhythm of things. Shoot, I didn't take the plug out, and you take the plug out with the engine thing, so that will be forthcoming in discussion. And I also did some research and found out in the same meeting guideline and procedure, all council members, and I'm reading directly from the document, all council members and commissioners shall be given a policy handbook upon taking office and will sign a statement acknowledging receipt of the policies and agreeing to abide by them.
Very good.
I've been here 3.5 years. I haven't seen that book.
Yeah, no, that's good.
It's a rumor, it's an urban legend. So maybe we can do some research and find out where that manual is.
So that rule that you mentioned is relatively new. I believe that was adopted by the council in this last year. So for the next new term for commissioners, they will definitely receive a handbook and be asked to acknowledge it.
Okay, all right. Excellent. Well, that is all I have. It is, SOPs and SOGs, just, they save your bacon, They make the job so much easier and so much easier. I agree. Is there anything else for the good of the order? No? Okay. As always, we'd like to thank the representatives of the city services that enhance our quality of life and keep us safe for attending and keep up the good work, the excellent work that they're doing. To watch a recording of this meeting and other meetings dating back, I believe, as far as 2009, the website cityofdhs.org can be visited. Our next scheduled meeting is May 9th, 6 p.m. in these chambers. If there's nothing else, we stand adjourned. Thank you and good night.